is a presentation of the Match Talk Podcast Network. It's time for the ODU Wrestling Monarch Matcast, a show dedicated to all things related to the Old Dominion Wrestling program. On the web at monarchmatcast.com. Now, here's your host, three-time National Wrestling Writer and Broadcaster of the Year, and 2004 ODU alumnus, Jason Bryant.
College wrestling season has come and gone, and with it, we will wrap up this season with this edition of the ODU Wrestling Monarch Matcast. Jason Bryant with you after an exhausting last month of the season. Mike Dixon, associate head coach, our guest to talk about Monarch wrestling and where we move forward from here after the Monarch streak of 4 consecutive years with an All-American was snapped. All 4 qualifiers are back next year, so there's some things to grow on the future. First of all, Coach Dixon, have you recovered from Cleveland just yet?
I have recovered from Cleveland, but the work never stops. You know, we're full on into recruiting mode. So we actually have kids on campus right now, and we'll probably be going all weekend, and the work never stops, to be honest with you.
Of course, this time of the year, high school nationals coming to the NHSCA, high school nationals coming to the Virginia Beach ocean front. So that's where this is a big weekend in terms of recruiting for Old Dominion, as a lot, I mean, we're talking thousands of kids, opportunity to see campus.
Yeah. We get a lot of coaches that reach out to us about coming on campus, checking things out. And like I said, we've had some hammers on campus. It actually helps us out tremendously, having this tremendous tournament in town. A lot of kids, basically make their way down to Virginia Beach that may not otherwise do so. So it's a great opportunity for us to try and get some of those kids on campus either before or after the tournament is going on, and they get a closer, in-depth view of what Old Dominion University is about and the wrestling program is about. So we're looking forward to hosting several kids and see if some of them can't become future Monarchs.
And, of course, this point in the year, with a lot of the signing period, I mean, what are you looking for this time of the year for any seniors, or is it mainly just kind of looking for things that, you know, the sophomores and juniors that you're kind of eyeing for the future?
Well, seniors, we kind of wrapped up our recruiting a little bit in the fall. Now, obviously, if there's a senior that kind of piques our interest a little bit, then, you know, we'll talk to them. But, you know, sometimes it could become a numbers game in terms of what scholarship dollars you have available for those seniors. But we're mostly targeting juniors and then obviously trying to get our hooks into some sophomores that we think might be good fits for a program. But, I mean, the biggest thing you want to do is target, obviously, the kids that you think are capable of wrestling at your level, and then it's basically all making sure that you're bringing in the right type of kid. Does that kid fit into your program? Does he fit in the community? Does he fit in the university? Because, I mean, the most important thing is it's got to be a fit. He's got to be somebody that matches what your mission is, you know, within the university. And, you know, the biggest thing is you want to make sure academically they can handle the school, and are they good people? You know, I mean, because as a coach, you don't want to have to go home every night and just lie awake at night wondering if kids are going to make good decisions. You want to know that I know these kids are making good decisions, and you can sleep well at night. So there's a lot of vetting that goes on. We want to make sure we're bringing in the right people. You know, sometimes it's not always the best people that you bring in, but it's the right people you bring in, and developing a proper culture that'll lead you to winning titles.
What's also interesting is the state of recruiting has changed. You know, even 10 years ago when I was doing the recruiting rankings for Intermat, you know, we had a lot less video. We had coaches really looking at the top 200 and then saying, okay, I got to watch this kid, got to watch this kid. Now with video out there, a lot of the recruiting in terms of how the kids wrestle, you can see on video, but what you see in person is maybe how they handle a big win, or more importantly, I guess, how they handle a loss, how they conduct themselves off the mat. What are they doing social media wise? I mean, how has the recruiting game changed since you started your coaching career?
There's a lot more access points, I would say. So it's pretty easy to find out about a kid and his social behaviors just through social media. You know, I remember there was a time where obviously kids weren't on social media. Then everybody was on Facebook. And then when adults started getting on Facebook, they got off that and they got on Twitter and all that stuff. So I still prefer, to be honest with you, when I go to a kid, I 9 times out of 10, I'm going to go to his high school. Obviously, we're going to talk to the high school coach and all that stuff, but I like talking to teachers and guidance counselors, people that really don't have a skin in the game, to find out what type of kid is this, what is the kid like in the classroom, because I mean, the transcript will tell me one thing, but just how does he interact with people, at lunchtime, after school? Is he a good person, or is he somebody that you can't wait till this kid graduates because he's just a pain, So it's really getting to know what type of person you're bringing in on your campus and into the university, because we're going to be with that person for the next 4 or 5 years. So we want to make sure we're bringing in somebody that we want to be around, to be honest with you. So I'm not huge on social media, but obviously, kids are these days and all that stuff. But, we just want to make sure that kids are making good decisions. And I really haven't had to have the talk about making good decisions about what kids post on social media. I think that's kind of cycled through, where kids understand that, what you put out there is out there forever. But I can remember a time where I would see some stuff on social media and I would be like, just cross the kid off the list. Like, we're done with him, just by a simple picture. So, but we try and target kids that we know are going to make those good decisions. And then obviously, you want to vet them and get them on campus and see if financially it's a good fit, and obviously communicating with that kid's inner circle, usually high school coaches, parents, and all that stuff. So it's a long, never-ending, tiresome process just to get one kid. And when you're trying to recruit 5 or 6 or 7 per year, that's a lot of legwork you got to put in. And if we sign 5 or 6, you're talking we probably brought 3 times that amount on campus, to be honest with you, and we're probably calling 5 or 6 times that amount. So it's a long process just to sign one kid, to be honest with you. So,
what have you as a staff done with and talking with other coaches on campus and other sports and finding strategies? So, like, wait a minute, maybe that'll work for wrestling. I mean, how much have you been able to borrow and share? Their knowledge and your knowledge, whether if it is, if the coordinator for the football team or a women's basketball coach, what have you learned and shared with one another?
Well, one of the things when I was younger as a coach, I would just, this kid can wrestle, let's go after him. So I didn't quite do the vetting, but one thing I did learn from football is going to the guidance counselor. I can't remember what coach specifically, but I remember he told me, he's like, I always talk to the guidance counselor. Ever since he told me that, I've been doing that, so I've been doing it for a number of years now, but, because sometimes some high school coaches will misrepresent certain things, not saying all do. And fortunately, I have relationships with enough coaches that, a lot of them are just going to be straight up with you, tell you, yes, this is a good kid, or no, it's not. But you always want to get different perspectives. But kind of how we are, we do a lot of in-home visits. We visit a lot of clubs. I pick football's brain a lot just because they recruit a lot, but, visiting the school and the guidance counselor, one thing I picked up from them. And really, the bottom line is most of these parents, they just want to know that at the end of the day, when they ship their kids off to college, that they're going to be taken care of. Obviously, they want to be able to win a national title, but only 10 people can say that a year. But at the end of the day, it's basically after 4 or 5 years, is my kid going to get a degree? Is he going to be a better person than when he stepped on your campus 4 or 5 years ago? So it's just showing them that, he will be taken care of. We do have his best interest out, and we're going to get a degree. But really, like I said, the guidance counselor thing is probably the biggest thing I've picked up from football.
Moving forward, as we've finished up the NCAA Wrestling Championship, solid championships, fun. I mean, Old Dominion was not a factor in the team race. Could shake some things up early. Of course, Mikhail McGee, for example, had the overtime loss to Sean Fowles from NC State in the first round. That could have really mixed things up for NC State as they came home with a trophy, finishing in a tie for fourth place. But when you look at the championship race as a coach and sit back and have the opportunity to see what went on in Cleveland and, the year before in St. Louis, year before in New York City, et cetera, it seems like we've sold out and set records for attendance. I mean, it's really exciting time to be a wrestling fan right now. And then right on top of that, we've got conference rival Eastern Michigan announced on Tuesday that they were dropping wrestling among other sports. So, it's kind of like, we're coming off a great high as a sport, and then we get kicked in the teeth with, Eastern Michigan dropping right after we hear that Arkansas Little Rock is adding a Division I wrestling program.
Yeah, it's I guess the ebbs and flows, the ups and downs. Like I said, coming off a great championship, it was a very, very tight team race, and it almost came down to one of the last matches. So, very exciting even for the casual viewer. And then, like I said, the devastating news about Eastern Michigan, and obviously that impacts us a little bit. They're in our conference, and Luke Smith is a former colleague of ours. So it's unfortunate when opportunities are taken away, and you certainly hope that the administration up there is open to looking at other options and alternatives. I understand, money is money, and sometimes you got to make tough decisions, but that it's affecting obviously not just wrestlers, but it's affecting other people's lives. And you would think that they would, there could be other measures, cost-cutting measures that they could take in order to prevent a situation like this from happening, because basically, a lot of people are going to end up leaving their school, because of this decision, because, a lot of these kids, specifically with wrestling, they probably came to Eastern Michigan to wrestle, and once it's taken away from them, they're probably, well, I'm out, so it's unfortunate when schools do drop any sports program, but obviously with us specifically wrestling. So that's why it's very, very important in each and every community across the country that, whatever program you got within your community, make sure you're supporting it either through your dollars or through your attendance at matches, or just, however you can help that program, because if there's a vested interest in that program, it's going to make it harder for the administration to make that decision to cut it. I remember Rob Cole told me a long time ago, when he's raising money, even those small gifts make a difference, because if your administration sees that they have all these gifts coming in all throughout the year, if you have hundreds and hundreds of different people donating to your program, some large amounts, some small amounts, he's like, one of the things that the administration doesn't like is they don't want their inboxes flooded with 10,000 emails, 1,000 emails. So that's why support is very, very critical, with your Olympic sports. It's very, very critical, because for the most part, football and basketball are safe, and really everybody else, they kind of have to keep one eye forward and one eye behind them just to make sure, what's new, what's next, especially with all this arms race, and they keep putting more and more money into football. The rest of us have to kind of fight for the scraps. So like I said, it's an unfortunate decision, and we certainly hope that the administration is open to reconsidering, not dropping that program, but maybe some alternatives, and, hopefully we can do what we can to move forward, and we want to keep that program on.
Yeah, had a solid season. Cedarian Perry, actually, the start of his real run came at the expense of an ODU athlete as he upset Alex Madrigal in the first round of the MAC, and then that pretty much just set him on a pretty good course there. But one thing as it relates to non-revenue sports, especially looking around the landscape of wrestling and in Hampton Roads, look at the amount of Old Dominion alumni that are coaching wrestling, not just in Hampton Roads, but in the state of Virginia, and where those connections come from. I mean, how many former athletes are now sending kids to Old Dominion? The same can be said at Eastern Michigan. The same can be said at Central Michigan. Same can be said at a lot of these state schools. This is where Longwood College, when they cut wrestling as a Division II school probably 18 years ago, the number of teachers that had wrestling backgrounds kind of lost. So it's important, and it's the same thing with swimming, with tennis, with softball. It's the state schools where people want to be teachers that are going to be coaching. So that's where the unspoken benefit to your university is a non-revenue sport because, where do you think these coaching connections are coming to get these kids degrees? It's people who went there. I mean, like Jeff Rusak, who went in the Hall of Fame, was on this program not that long ago. The reason he came to Old Dominion is his coach went to Old Dominion. So there's so many things that are important to a wrestling program or an all sports program when you're keeping the health of your programs. And, there's a number of ODU alumni, like you said, Mike, they're sending our kids to Norfolk.
Sure. And another unintended consequence could be you keep cutting these Olympic sports is at some point it's going to start affecting, an Olympic year. We're all go USA. Well, a lot of these kids get their training, from collegiate athletics. And when you start cutting these programs and these kids don't have an opportunity to compete in collegiately, then at some point you're going to start seeing the effects at the international level when, 1 year at an Olympics, maybe the U.S. doesn't do so well, then everyone starts saying, why? Well, all of a sudden, we've cut all these Olympic sports, so there's no opportunities or places for these kids to train. Whereas in other countries, they got places and opportunities to train. So that can be an unintended consequence. And, like I said, I think the pie is big enough where you can have your Olympic sports as well as your football and your basketball, but it's sometimes you're going to have to make smart decisions. Is it necessarily smart to let football eat the entire, pie? I don't know. Each school and each administration have to make those decisions, which is obviously best for what they see as their university. But I think in today's day and age, with all the different ways that you can make money, I think the pie is big enough where you can keep everything. But sometimes you just may have to make smart decisions in terms of if you want this, well, you're going to have to fundraise for this. We can't pay for it. It's got to come out of private funds, So, everybody's got their own situation. But like I said, we certainly hope Eastern Michigan is open to reconsidering and at least allow a pathway to where, if you want to reinstate wrestling, at least allow a pathway, and then obviously that community and the wrestling community needs to get behind them and support them and see if we can't keep it around.
Moving forward on to the MAC and NCAA championships, a good season overall in terms of the conference, 5-2, finishing third overall in dual meets, 9-9 in duels, kind of an up and down season when it came to duels. 7th at the MAC tournament, not exactly the performance expected. Got 4 guys through to the show: Mikhail McGee at 125, Alex Madrigal at 141, Larry Early at 157, and Seldon Wright at 174. First of all, general takeaways from what you guys can do to improve the performance in the MAC. Of course, with Eastern Michigan leaving, SIU Edwardsville will come in next year. But before we even talk national championship tournament, what's got to happen at the conference level?
Like I said, during the conference season, it was a lot of up and downs. I think we did have some days where we wrestled well. We had some other days we didn't wrestle so well, and obviously our conference tournament was not what we wanted at all. But we need 10 guys scoring points. Our goal is to win a MAC championship, so we need 10 weights all scoring points for us, and we didn't get that, and that's something we have to prove upon. The benefit or the positive is other than 133, everybody's coming back. So that should be a benefit. In theory, we should be better, but we got to put in the work. So we've already met with the 4 guys that went to nationals, and we've already discussed a plan moving forward in the spring and during the summer. And we will go through the rest of our team one by one, make sure we address areas of improvement and all that stuff. But the biggest thing is we need to be consistent every day, 365 days a year, And I actually had a conversation with Machiavelli from NC State. And one of the things he kept talking to me about on how he won his national title is one of the themes that kept coming across was confidence. He kept talking to me about how confident he was in himself, how much confidence he has. He said it all started when he was wondering why people didn't believe in him and all that stuff. And then finally, he's like, if I don't believe in myself, nobody else is going to believe in myself. So he just started training hard, getting confidence in himself, and all of a sudden people started kind of jumping on board. So confidence comes from training, some guys got to put in a little bit more work. Some guys, we got to get better technically. Some guys got to get stronger. So, there's areas all across the board that we got to get better at. And we're going to be committed, and we're going to help these guys get to where they need to go. And some of the other guys like McGee, he's shown he can compete at the national level. His next step is, we want him training for freestyle, ideally making a junior world team, getting an opportunity to go out to the Olympic Training Center. But next year when he goes out to the national tournament, and really all four of those guys that were at the national tournament, the next step is really now you need to be seeded going into that tournament. We had 4 qualifiers. They were all unseeded. So the issue with that is McGee sees the 5 seed right off the bat. Larry Early has a pigtail match right off the bat. Alex Madrigal has a 4 seed right off the bat. Selden Wright, he's got a 16 seed. So, next year, hopefully, we're in a different situation where these guys are seeded to where it doesn't guarantee anything, but the path, in theory, is a little bit easier. And then obviously the higher seed is, hopefully, good things are happening for you. So that's what we're working on schedule-wise. We're going to change some things up on our schedule, but at the same time, we're trying to balance the top end of our lineup, those 4 national qualifiers, making sure they're seeing who they need to see to make sure they have a national seed. And the other guys that have not been there, there needs to be a balance there to make sure they're doing what they need to do so that they can actually get to the national tournament. Because I think one thing that happened is these guys that went there, and really Selden was the only one that wrestled in the national tournament last year, is I think there's a lot of eye-opening, So those guys this week, it's a lot of self-evaluation, recovering your body and all that stuff. And then, like I said, it's going to be get back to work time. It's going to be get back to work time. So the other guys on the team, several of them are getting to work and training and asking coaches for help. And, some others, we probably need to get on board a little bit, with the game plan. So that's kind of where we're at. But like I said, it was an up and down, exciting season at times, other times a little bit disappointing, but that's what's going to happen with youth. So our job is we want to make sure we're a lot more consistent. And obviously, when we have opportunities to wrestle like the NC States and the Northwesterns of the world, we want to make sure we take advantage of those opportunities. And then, when we're wrestling people that we're capable of dominating, we want to make sure we're doing that. So it's a long process, but, we've already restarted. It's 365 days to the national tournament and next year in Pittsburgh. So the clock starts and, it's time to get to work.
We talk about Pittsburgh. So you got Iron City Beer, you got Permani Brothers. We got the staples of Pittsburgh cuisine up there for PPG Paints Arena next year.
I'm sure you're well versed in it. I'm not so well versed in it, but Pittsburgh, not that far from Cleveland. I'm sure it'll be another great championship. You're in Western PA. A lot of wrestling people, so I'm not sure how big that arena is. I think we set a new record, correct, for NCAA attendance?
Yes, I actually even played my when I announced the record. I even gave my homage to WWE ring announcer Howard Finkel, going and new. Yeah, so they set the record almost 20,000 that last session, which was crazy.
Oh wow,
113.7 was the 6 session total, where the previous record was 113.13. So it was cool there in Cleveland. Very cool, and I say cool because that wind blowing off the lake was rough. But back to the team you talked about, actually wrestling in it. Selden, of course, competed last year. Larry Early didn't qualify last year. Madrigal didn't step on the mat last year, and kind of had a rough stretch there. What was up with Alex in his last 2 weeks of the season?
Like I said, with him, I think it's just being consistent. Like I said, he had some peaks and valleys this year, so we just got to make sure he's consistent. Alex is definitely capable of, a lot of those guys that were the guys that qualified for nationals. When we sat down and looked at the guys that were in round of 12, each of them at each wrestled about 4 or 5 guys or so. That ended up being on the podium around a 12 type guy. And, most of them had at least beaten one of them. So they're definitely capable, but I think it just comes from consistency and discipline. They've shown they're capable, but, just doing it once out of the year versus this is what I do every day and this is the process, I think that's the biggest thing. And Alex, just like really the rest of our team, it's just, a little bit being young, and this was his first time wrestling. Now he sees it. He knows he's capable of beating All-Americans because now he's beaten guys that ended up on the podium. So hopefully that opens his eyes and, hey, I'm good enough to get on the podium. I just have to be consistent with everything I do. And that's what we try to preach to our guys, that, hey, the little things matter, because you start overlooking the small things. The next thing you know, you're giving yourself an excuse. You're giving yourself an excuse. The next thing, all these little things, that'll turn into something big. So we just want to make sure that they are disciplined, maintaining themselves, doing what they're supposed to do, and we'll get it straightened out. We'll get it straightened out, and by next year, we should have a better version of this team.
You talked about McGee, Mikhail McGee, coming a true freshman conference champion and actually avenged a loss in the process to win that conference title over Brock Hudkins of Northern Illinois. Where did he really improve this season, and what does he still need to work on?
McGee we talked about Machiavelli from NC State, how his confidence, McGee already has that. He's a very, very confident kid. He knows he's good. My man trains hard. A lot of it's just technical thing. He basically likes to wrestle in the open and likes the speed, the quickness, and he struggled at times with generally a lot of your hand fighters, your Big Ten guys that are going to kind of pull on your head a lot, so just getting him to be able to learn how to wrestle, those type of guys, being able to clear ties, as well as, obviously being able to get off bottom, because wrestling on bottom in high school and wrestling bottom in college are really two different things. And it's kind of learning process. And he was somebody that got thrown into the fire right away. So it's kind of learning on the go, but he's somebody, he's very dedicated to watching film. He picks things up very quickly. He trains hard. He trains a lot. He trains a lot by himself. So it's just kind of getting other people involved to make sure that he is constantly improving, because, obviously, the sky's the limit with him, but like I told him as soon as after his last match, I said, hey, keep your head up. And I said, actually, he said to me right after I said that, he's like, Dixon, I'm going to win this thing next year. So, that goes to a lot of the confidence that he's talking about. So he knows he can compete with these guys. And I told him, I said, my job is to make sure you're seeded next year. So some of these guys that we know we have top ranked guys, we're going to make sure he's in front of, we're going to make sure he's going to the right tournaments to where he has got opportunities to wrestle some of these upper echelon guys so that he's got a chance to beat them. So again, he's going in the tournament next year. He's got a seed, because that's what we want to make sure is happening. Definitely with these 4 qualifiers and anybody else that is coming to the program. It'd be great if we could get 10 qualifiers and 10 guys going to the national tournament. But I think McGee, just by his presence, is a leader amongst our group. And I told him, part of the deal now that you've been to nationals, and we've got 4 guys that have been, 6 that haven't, is people watching you through your actions. You have to be a leader now, whether you want to or not. But I think McGee will take on that role. But part of being a leader is you got to set an example. So, but he sets a good example for everybody. But he's going to continue to work on his craft and get better. And I can't wait for next year.
Larry Early, who came to the program midway through the season last year, now got a full season under his belt, made the tournament, picked up a pigtail win, was actually winning against the 14 seed before he got thrown to his back and pinned, but did pick up a win, avenging some losses to Colin Heffernan of Central Michigan on the backside before ultimately falling to All-American Josh Shields of Arizona State. Where was his progression? I mean, obviously coming into the season last year, not a whole lot of time with the program to try to qualify this year, avenge some losses from last year, also, won some matches at the show. Yeah. Larry's a very, very talented individual. Obviously, his high school credentials speak for themselves. And, we've kind of had to, it was a learning process. And like I told his folks, I said, we're way, way better than where we were last year, but it's obviously just continuing to make that climb because, Larry is capable of being at the top of the podium. But we just got to, again, consistency with him, consistency with
training, consistency with diet, just making sure we're doing everything right. That's the biggest thing with Larry. He knows how to wrestle. He's wrestled at the highest level. He's confident in himself, so those aren't the issues, but it's just really doing the little things right. The more we can do the little things right, the better off he's going to be. And he's got opportunities to, in about 2 months, he'll have an opportunity to train 4 days with the national runner-up in his weight class, which that's an opportunity that, a lot of people would take. So we can pick some things up from there. He can kind of pick some things up from some other guys down at NC State, kind of see what's going on. But he's somebody that I expect for the next couple of years, as long as he's doing everything right, he should be in contention for a title, So, and he's a big name just because everybody knows the name that can kind of help shine the light, I guess you could say, on a program. But I expect a lot of good things out of this group going into next year.
And Selden Wright again, another trip to the show. Again, sees flashes of where he can compete with anybody, and then flashes where it looks like anybody can probably steal a win from him. Where does Selden need to improve the most going into his senior year?
Basically with Selden, he's got one more opportunity. So, he's, like you said, he's very, very talented. We talked about just being all in for your last year. Let's be all in last year for your last year, and let's see where the chips fall where they may after that. So that way you leave nothing out on the table to where you say, hey, no matter what happens, I've at least put everything into it. What we told him after his last match is, as soon as he walked off, I said, hey, your effort and the way you were attacking, I'll take that every match. I said, but we got to learn now how to basically improve on your technique so you know how to finish these things, So he's got some technical things he's got to work on. There's some things that he knows he needs to work on himself, but he's somebody, basically he's going to be our only senior next year. He's got to step his game up and basically show this group, this is how it's done. This is how it needs to be done. And like I said, he's only got one more shot. So after that, wrestling career's over unless he decides to tackle freestyle or something like that. But, we just talked to him about, you got 365 days. Let's be all in.
As we got 365 days, as you said, all into the next NCAA championships with just one senior on the team. That was actually more or less, it was a grad student. It was like dad for, I guess, most of the guys. Isn't he older than, isn't Caleb Richardson older than McCarty?
He is.
I'm older than you, coach.
He could actually, we actually put him down on trips to drive when we drove vans instead of Steve, because nobody wants to be behind the wheel, or nobody wants to be in the car with Steve's behind the wheel.
Nobody wants Steve to drive. That was like first trip, year one. We knew that before leaving Hampton Boulevard. We're like, Ace, Testa, you're driving. Because Pritz was already in front of us.
That's right.
Year before you were even here, man, it was like, Steve ain't driving. And here's the thing. Steve at Great Bridge High School taught people how to drive. So there's a whole generation of kids in South Chesapeake that are just driving like Steve Martin. And to me, that's terrifying. That's why I moved away. I run
into him every day.
I moved away specifically because Steve's disciples were on the road.
Yes. Like I said, I think I see them every day, and it's scary.
Now, as we move forward again, no All-Americans. We had a good streak there. What's it mean from the staff's position to say, okay, goals for Dr. Selig's, like lays out, you got program goals. When you come home without an All-American, what is the discussion like, and what does the administration feel about the progress of a 9-9 season, 5-2 in the MAC, and the school board at the NCAAs is kind of deceiving in terms of how team scores are accumulated. But, what goals did you guys hit in terms of, and where's the administration feel that you guys should be pushing towards?
Our goal and our administration's goal is to win championships, bottom line. And we did not achieve that, so it's basically sitting down and evaluating, okay, our administrators, well, what do we need to do to make sure this happens? And, our sport administrator, Reagan Hill, she was with us at our conference tournament as well as the NCAA tournament. So that was kind of her real first taste of wrestling. And I asked her, what'd you think? And, she was like, I like it. I'm all in. But going into conferences, I was worried that we were going to be a little bit better dual meet team than a tournament team, and that unfortunately came to fruition. But I think we did show we were capable of being a good tournament team, because at the Navy Classic, we beat we placed ahead of some solid teams. So we're capable of doing it. It's just, getting guys to believe and getting guys to perform match after match. Consistency, consistency in your approach, consistent in your preparation, and just doing it every day over and over again. And sometimes when you're young, you don't understand. I need to leave a mundane, boring lifestyle. Sometimes people want to be the life of the party and all that stuff, and that's not what's going to get it done. So. We're right now talking with all our athletes about things that need to get better, things that need to be improved upon. Like I said, we're also in recruiting mode, so we're trying to add to the talent and depth of our team to make sure not only do we have enough kids in every weight class, but the depth in every weight class. And what we're trying to do is create competition in every weight class is really what we're trying to do. So that way the athletes themselves will decide who the guy's going to be, and, iron sharpens iron. So that way, if somebody's slacking, then somebody else will just pick it up and kind of take the lead there. So, we're always evaluating our team. We tell everybody no spot is guaranteed. So just because you may have qualified for nationals and other people in your weight class have not done it, next year's not guaranteed. So, we are recruiting. As a matter of fact, while I was on the phone, or while I'm on the phone right now, I had a recruit beep in that I'm going to have to call right after this that, will basically, he's going to be somebody that we feel will be able to step in right away and definitely create some competition for us. So, that's competition is what we're trying to do as a coaching staff, is make sure we create competition at every weight class. That way you're going to have to bust your butt to make sure you got a spot.
You hear that? That's a subtle way of saying, I'm done with this interview. I need to go call this recruit. So, he can fly the W in a week. But you got to get your recruits right now. So, Coach Dixon, thanks for the recap. We'll have more summer features from the ODU Wrestling Monarch Mattcast here on the Matt Talk Podcast Network. And I'm not sure if I'm trying to think. Let's see if I can avoid Steve's driving. I'm not sure when the next time I'll be in town, but next time I hit Hampton Roads, we'll have another office visit and another episode of the Monarch Mattcast. Coach Dixon, thanks for the time.
Thank you.
This show is part of the Matt Talk Podcast Network. For more wrestling podcasts, head over to MattTalkOnline.com.